There are 7 cities in America with legitimate skylines where the median home price is under $240,000. One is under $80,000, and the comments are gonna lose their minds. Manhattan skyline condos average $2.1 million. San Francisco, $1.4 million. Seattle will cost you $850,000 to wake up to the Space Needle. Meanwhile, there's a 3-river skyline in Pennsylvania that's genuinely breathtaking where you can buy in for under $200,000. There's an Art Deco masterpiece in Oklahoma where the skyline looks like Gotham City, designed by optimists, and homes cost $165,000. This is the list nobody's making because it doesn't fit the narrative. If you're tired of being told the only skylines worth having cost 7 figures, hit that like button and drop a comment with the most underrated skyline in America. Let's start in the Midwest, where Chicago's shadow hides one of the best skyline deals in the country. Wait. Milwaukee, Wisconsin, the overlooked giant. Milwaukee has a problem, and the problem is Chicago. Not because Chicago is better, though don't tell anyone from Chicago that. The problem is that 90 miles south, Chicago sucked all the oxygen out of the room and left Milwaukee to exist in permanent shadow, which is unfortunate because Milwaukee's lakefront skyline rivals anything Chicago's got. The beer barons built Art Deco and Gothic Revival masterpieces that make most American downtowns look like strip malls with ambition, and the whole thing sits right on Lake Michigan, looking like someone remembered the Midwest is allowed to be beautiful. The Northwestern Mutual Tower, the US Bank Center, Milwaukee City Hall with its Flemish Renaissance flourishes. This isn't generic glass and steel. This is architecture with opinions. Stand at the lakefront on a clear morning and the skyline gleams against the water. And for about 30 seconds you forget you're in Wisconsin. Then someone mentions the Packers and the spell breaks. Median home price, $225,000. That's $125,000 cheaper than Chicago for a comparable home. And in Milwaukee, you might actually get lake views without requiring a second mortgage. According to Zillow, Milwaukee's housing market has stayed remarkably stable, while Chicago's climbed relentlessly upward. The city's Riverwalk development brought actual street life back downtown. The historic Third Ward turned old warehouses into lofts and galleries, and you can walk to things, an actual rarity in American cities built after 1950. Redfin data shows homes sitting on the market longer here than in comparable Midwest cities, which translates to negotiating power. Sellers aren't getting 15 all-cash offers from tech workers. You can actually think before you buy. Radical concept. Picture this. Sunday morning, early summer in Milwaukee. You're walking the lakefront as sailboats drift past the skyline. The smell of coffee from Collectivo mixes with lake water and sunscreen. You hear the Summerfest grounds setting up in the distance. Because Milwaukee hosts the world's largest music festival, and somehow this fact never makes it into national conversations. Your mortgage, $1,400 a month for a place that would cost $3,200 in Chicago and come with worse architecture. One local put it perfectly. We're like Chicago's younger sibling who's taller, better looking, and costs half as much. But Chicago gets all the attention because Chicago never shuts up about being Chicago. The trade-off is winter, and winter in Milwaukee isn't a season. It's a personal attack that lasts 6 months. January averages 20 degrees, but Lake Michigan doesn't moderate the cold like it does in Chicago. It weaponizes it. Lake effect snow, wind that cuts through every layer you own, and a gray sky that hangs over the city from November through April like it's got a lease. You'll need a quality winter coat, a car with working heat, and the emotional fortitude to accept that spring is a myth perpetuated by calendar companies. The job market is smaller than Chicago's. Healthcare, manufacturing, insurance all have a presence, but you're not getting the corporate diversity of a true major metro. The cultural scene is solid, but not deep. You've got the Milwaukee Art Museum with its stunning Calatrava edition. You've got theater and music, but you're not getting 47 options for any given night like you would 2 hours south. But here's what you are getting: a legitimate skyline on a great lake, historic architecture that wasn't demolished for parking garages, walkable neighborhoods, and a cost of living that makes sense. Milwaukee is what happens when a city has all the ingredients for expensive and somehow stays affordable anyway. If you can handle winter and being constantly compared to your louder neighbor, Milwaukee is the skyline deal nobody's talking about. Now let's head south to the plains, where oil money built something nobody expected and tornado sirens are just part of the ambience. Number 7. Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, the reinvention nobody saw coming. Oklahoma City shouldn't work. It should be cattle ranches, mega churches, and maybe one tall building where oil executives keep track of wells. It should look like every other Sunbelt sprawl city that got copy-pasted across the interior. Big box stores, parking lots, and a downtown that empties out at 6 p.m. Then something weird happened. Oklahoma City looked at itself in the mirror, decided it was embarrassing, and spent the next 20 years fixing it with the kind of determination usually reserved for high school reunions. The Devon Energy Center went up in 2012, 50 stories of glass and steel that genuinely looks like it belongs in a real city, not Oklahoma. The Oklahoma City Thunder moved downtown, and suddenly people had a reason to be there after dark. The MAPS projects, a series of voter-approved sales tax initiatives, poured over $2 billion into making the city look like someone actually gave a damn. And now Oklahoma City has a skyline that looks modern, intentional, and absolutely nothing like what you'd expect from a place where the official state meal is chicken fried steak with a side of more chicken fried steak. Median home price, $185,000. According to the Oklahoma City Metro Association of Realtors, you're getting new construction, actual square footage. 2,000 plus square feet isn't a luxury, it's standard, and in many cases a yard that doesn't require conquest of neighboring properties. Zillow confirms homes are moving faster than the national average. People are figuring this out, quietly, without making it a whole thing. The skyline sits flat against the plains with no mountains or water to frame it, just geometry and glass against endless sky. It shouldn't work. It does anyway. The Paycom Center, the Convention Center, and the cluster of modern towers create an actual urban core where one didn't exist 15 years ago. But let's talk about what living here actually means. Oklahoma City is in Tornado Alley, and that's not a cute nickname. It's a meteorological reality that will test your relationship with basements. The sirens will go off, the sky will turn green, you will grab your pets, your documents, and whatever emotional support items you need, and you will sit in an interior room while the weather tries to murder your neighborhood. This isn't hypothetical, it's spring in Oklahoma. Picture this, May afternoon in Oklahoma City. You're sitting in your backyard with a lawn you can actually afford to have, watching the sky because you've learned to watch the sky. The clouds stack up dark and strange to the west. Your phone buzzes, tornado watch, then warning. You're inside within 2 minutes, in the safe room within 5, and 20 minutes later it's passed, and you're outside assessing whether your patio furniture stayed in Oklahoma or relocated to Kansas. Your neighbors are doing the same thing. Nobody's panicking. This is just spring. Summer temperatures hit 100 plus with regularity, the kind of heat where your car's steering wheel becomes a torture device if you park in the sun. The city sprawls endlessly in every direction because there's nothing to stop it. You will need a car for everything. Public transit exists in the same way that Bigfoot exists, theoretically somewhere, but you're not going to rely on it. One realtor told us off the record, "We built a skyline before we built a reason to stay downtown after sunset. Now we're working backwards and praying it works." So far, it's actually working. The job market is stronger than you'd expect. Energy still dominates. This is Oklahoma. Oil runs deep, but healthcare is growing. Aerospace has a presence. Tinker Air Force Base employs thousands. And remote workers are discovering you can have a 2,500 square foot house for less than a Brooklyn studio costs annually. Unemployment consistently runs below the national average. The food scene has legitimate diversity. Vietnamese and Mexican communities that predate the downtown revival by decades. You've got Cattleman's Steakhouse serving the same steak since 1910. You've got Pho Quang and dozen other spots that prove OKC isn't just barbecue and Sonic. But you're in Oklahoma. The politics lean hard right in ways that might make you uncomfortable if you're coming from either coast. The cultural amenities are catching up to the skyline, but they're not there yet. The nearest mountain is a very long drive through very flat nothing. A $185,000 house here would cost you $650,000 in Austin and come with half the space and an equally miserable summer. The gap is real. If you can handle the weather trying to kill you seasonally and the politics making you question geography, Oklahoma City is the reinvention story nobody saw coming and the skyline deal that keeps getting better. At least here, your biggest weather concern is tornadoes. Milwaukee's lake effect snow is slower, but just as relentless, and somehow feels more personal. From Tornado Alley to the city that weaponized being underestimated. Next up is the place that works so well it's almost boring. 6. Indianapolis, Indiana, the understated overachiever. Indianapolis doesn't want your attention. It's not interested in being cool or trendy or the subject of breathless think pieces about urban revivals. Indianapolis just wants to work, stay affordable, and maybe, if you're paying attention, quietly be better than half the cities you've actually heard of. The Salesforce Tower rises 49 stories over Monument Circle like a middle finger to everyone who thinks the Midwest can't do skylines. The Indiana War Memorial, the state capitol, and the cluster of limestone and glass towers create a compact downtown that feels more East Coast than flyover. It photographs well, it functions better, and almost nobody outside Indiana knows it exists. Median home price, $235,000. One realtor told us off the record, Indianapolis is where people move when they realize adulting is expensive and skylines don't have to be. We're the city nobody brags about and everyone's mortgage envies. That quote should be on the welcome sign because it's devastatingly accurate. According to Zillow, Indianapolis housing has appreciated steadily without the boom-bust violence that wrecks other markets. The Indy Metro Board of Realtors confirms inventory stays balanced. You're not fighting 23 all-cash offers from California tech refugees. You can think before you buy. You can negotiate. You can tour a house without a blood oath and a bidding war. These are normal things that feel radical in 2024. The city built the Cultural Trail, an 8-mile bike and pedestrian path connecting neighborhoods, and people actually use it, not as a photo op, as transportation. Mass Avenue and Fountain Square aren't trying to be Brooklyn. They're just neighborhoods with restaurants, bars, galleries, and local businesses that survive because rent didn't quintuple overnight. The Colts play downtown. The Pacers play downtown. The NCAA headquarters is here. Convention business keeps hotels full and restaurants open. It all just works, which is apparently so unusual in American urbanism that nobody knows how to write about it without sounding boring. Picture this. Saturday morning in Indianapolis, you're biking the Cultural Trail, the skyline rising clean and geometric ahead of you. You pass food trucks setting up near the canal, smell coffee from Coat Check Coffee, hear live music from an outdoor stage someone set up because they could afford to. Your monthly housing cost, mortgage, insurance, property tax combined is $1,600. Your friends in Nashville pay that for a 1-bedroom apartment with a view of another apartment building. You're winning and nobody knows it but you. The winters are cold but survivable. Nothing like Milwaukee's lake effect brutality. It gets to 20 degrees, it snows, you shovel, life continues. Summer hits that Midwest humid sweet spot where the air has weight and everyone just accepts that air conditioning is a utility like water and electricity. But here's the trade-off: cultural credibility. Nobody is impressed when you say you live in Indianapolis. Nobody's jealous. Your coastal friends will ask if you're near Chicago. You're not. Or if there's anything to do there. There is. Or why you'd move to Indiana. Because you want to retire before 75. You will spend significant energy explaining that yes, it's a real city. No, it's not just the 500. Yes, there are restaurants that aren't Applebee's. And if you thought Milwaukee suffered from Chicago's shadow, Indianapolis has perfected the art of being ignored entirely. Milwaukee at least gets mentioned as not Chicago. Indianapolis doesn't even get the comparison. It's just there, working, affordable, skyline gleaming, nobody watching. Indiana politics lean conservative in ways that might frustrate you. The state legislature makes decisions that will test your patience if you're coming from progressive metros. Public transit exists mostly as a theoretical concept. The Red Line bus rapid transit is trying, but you're going to need a car. The city sprawls in every direction without geographic boundaries to contain it. The job market is solid without being sexy. Eli Lilly headquarters here and employs 11,000 plus people. Salesforce has a major presence. Healthcare, logistics, and tech companies that relocated for cheap talent and low overhead all keep unemployment below national averages. You're not getting Silicon Valley opportunity, but you're also not getting Silicon Valley rent. The food scene has quietly become legitimately good. Bluebeard, Milktooth, Mesh, these aren't good for Indianapolis restaurants. They're good restaurants that happen to be in Indianapolis. The city has the second largest Burmese population in the US, which means if you know where to look, you're eating tea leaf salad and mohinga that would make waves anywhere. A $235,000 house here would cost you $580,000 in Portland and come with fewer Burmese restaurants and a smug cultural superiority that doesn't actually pay your mortgage. Indianapolis is the city that wins by not trying to win, that stays affordable by not being interesting enough to trend, that builds a legitimate skyline and then forgets to tell anyone about it. If you're okay with people not being impressed by your address, but being very impressed by your savings account, Indianapolis just became your connoisseur pick. Next up, barbecue, jazz, and a skyline that couldn't decide. 5. Kansas City, Missouri, the two-state skyline deal. Kansas City will pay you $10,000 to move here, but they'll make you figure out which Kansas City first, because there are two of them and they're technically in different states, and nobody's quite sure why this made sense at any point in history. The skyline sits primarily in Missouri. The suburbs sprawl into Kansas. The whole metropolitan area operates like someone drew city boundaries during a 3-day bender, and everyone just decided to live with the consequences. You can live in Kansas City, Kansas, and work in Kansas City, Missouri, which means you're commuting between states to go 4 miles and dealing with 2 different tax codes because somebody in 1838 thought this was a brilliant idea. The One Kansas City Place Tower rises 42 stories over the Missouri River. The Power and Light District brought actual nightlife back downtown after decades of suburban flight. The Kauffman Center for the Performing Arts looks like 2 giant seashells had a baby, and that baby became a concert hall that absolutely should not exist in the middle of the country, but somehow does. At night, when the whole skyline lights up against the river, it's genuinely beautiful in ways that make you forget you're in a tax nightmare. Median home price, $240,000. But here's the thing nobody tells you about Kansas City. You're getting legitimate world-class culture wrapped in a price tag that seems fake. According to the Kansas City Regional Association of Realtors, the market has stayed shockingly stable despite national chaos. You're getting actual yards, basements that don't flood, driveways where a second car isn't a luxury reserved for the wealthy. Zillow confirms you're not competing with 23 all-cash offers from tech workers fleeing the Bay Area. You can tour a house on Tuesday and make an offer on Wednesday without writing a love letter to the seller explaining why you deserve to live there. The food scene here is legitimately world-class, and I'm not using world-class the way food blogs use it to describe mediocre tacos. Joe's Kansas City, Q39, Arthur Bryant's. These are barbecue destinations that would have lines around the block in any city on earth. The burnt ends at Q39 would make a vegetarian reconsider their life choices. The Z-Man sandwich at Joe's has a waiting list at lunch that rivals nightclub velvet ropes. This isn't regional pride talking. This is smoked meat that justifies the entire metropolitan area's existence. Picture this. Friday night in Kansas City. You're at a table in the Crossroads Arts District, the skyline glowing behind gallery windows. The smell of burnt ends from a barbecue place 3 blocks away mixes with coffee from Messenger Coffee. You hear a saxophone from a street performer because Kansas City gave birth to Charlie Parker, and jazz still runs through the streets like groundwater. Your monthly housing cost? Less than your coastal friends pay for their car lease. The trade-off? You just drove 40 minutes to get here, and you'll drive 40 minutes home because Kansas City sprawls like it's trying to set a world record. The metropolitan area covers 7,952 square miles. That's larger than Connecticut, Delaware, Rhode Island, and the District of Columbia. You could fit all of those states inside Kansas City's metro area and still have room for a Costco parking lot. This means you will drive everywhere. The grocery store, drive. The gym, drive. That restaurant you can literally see from your window. You're driving because there's a highway between you and it, and jaywalking is for cities with crosswalks. One local summed it up perfectly. We've got a skyline, barbecue that'll make you cry, and rent that doesn't require a second job. The trade-off is you'll spend half your life in a car explaining to your GPS which Kansas City you actually meant. Public transit exists in the same way Bigfoot exists, theoretically somewhere, but you're not betting your commute on it. The KC streetcar runs downtown and it's free, which tells you everything you need to know about how many people actually use it. You need a car. You need a reliable car. You need a car with working AC because summer here is brutal. Summer temperatures regularly hit 95 plus with humidity that makes the air feel like you're breathing through a wet towel. The heat index will say 105 and you'll believe it because walking to your mailbox feels like a vision quest. Winter drops to the teens with ice storms that shut down the entire metro for days because Missouri doesn't believe in salt trucks and Kansas doesn't believe in Missouri. And because you're straddling 2 states, you get to navigate dual tax systems. Live in Kansas, work in Missouri. You're filing taxes in both states. house, own property in both. Congratulations, you're now an expert in comparative municipal tax code. The accountants here have job security that borders on immortal, but the job market is strong. Cerner, Hallmark, and a massive logistics industry keep unemployment low. The cost of living index sits around 90, meaning your dollar goes 10% further than the national average without any weird caveats or asterisks. A $240,000 house in Kansas City would cost you $680,000 in Denver and come with none of the barbecue, half the space, and exactly one state to pay taxes in. The jazz history here is real. The 18th and Vine District, the American Jazz Museum, the fact that Charlie Parker learned to play in these streets. It's not tourist board marketing, it's actual cultural infrastructure. The Negro Leagues Baseball Museum is here, and it's world class in ways that don't require qualifiers. You've got the Chiefs winning Super Bowls and making Arrowhead Stadium the loudest place on earth according to actual Guinness World Records. You've got the Royals having occasional moments of baseball competence. You've got Boulevard Brewing making beer that doesn't need apologies. But you're in the middle of the country. The nearest ocean is 850 miles in any direction. The nearest mountain is a conceptual discussion about what constitutes a mountain. If you need progressive politics or easy access to hiking trails, Kansas City will feel like exile with good barbecue. If you want a legitimate skyline, world-class food, stable employment, and a mortgage that doesn't require venture capital, Kansas City is the two-state experiment that somehow keeps working. And if you thought OKC's sprawl was bad, Kansas City looked at that and said, hold my burnt ends, and spread across 7,952 square miles just to prove a point. And if you thought Kansas City's geography was complicated, wait until you see what the Ohio River did to create natural skyline drama that most cities pay consultants millions to fake. On for 4, Cincinnati, Ohio, the River City sleeper. Cincinnati cheated, and I mean that as the highest compliment possible. Most American cities get flat land, a grid system, and the architectural challenge of making geometry interesting against nothing. Cincinnati got the Ohio River cutting through hills, natural elevation changes that create drama whether you're trying or not, and a geography that makes every skyline photo look like it was staged by someone who understands what a backdrop is supposed to do. The Great American Tower rises 41 stories with a crown that lights up at night in colors that change based on whatever Cincinnati is celebrating that week. Bengals win, breast cancer awareness, Random Tuesday. The Carew Tower, the PNC Tower, and the collection of Art Deco and modernist buildings stacked along the riverfront create a skyline that has actual depth. It's not just buildings next to buildings. It's buildings at different elevations, framed by hills, sitting on a river that curves just right. Cincinnati didn't have to work for this. It just got dealt a geographic royal flush and had the good sense not to screw it up. Median home price, $215,000. Stand at DeVoe Park in Covington, Kentucky, and look across the river at the Cincinnati skyline, and you'll understand why this made the list. The whole thing rises in layers against the hills, the river in the foreground, bridges connecting both sides, and you're looking at a view that would cost you $2 million in any city with branding competence. Cincinnati just lets you have it for the price of a used Subaru. According to the Cincinnati Area Board of Realtors, the market here has stayed remarkably affordable despite the city's proximity to major metros and despite having better bones than most of them. Zillow data shows homes selling within 30 days on average, inventory staying balanced, and prices climbing slowly enough that you can actually plan a purchase without refreshing Redfin like it's a sports ticker. You're getting historic neighborhoods where historic means actual architecture, not built in 1987, and we're calling it vintage. Over the Rhine is the poster child for urban renewal done right. This neighborhood was dying, literally dying, with buildings collapsing and crime that kept people away. Then something unexpected happened. Instead of bulldozing the historic German architecture and replacing it with luxury condos that look like they were designed by the same AI that generates stock photos, the city actually restored the buildings, preserved the brickwork, kept the character, brought in breweries and restaurants and art galleries, and now Over the Rhine is one of the most successful urban renewals in the country. You've got Rheingeist Brewery in a former bottling plant that looks like a beer cathedral. You've got Findlay Market operating since 1852, which means it was selling produce before Cincinnati had a skyline, and it's still here after the skyline showed up. The neighborhood didn't erase its history to become hip. It weaponized its history and became interesting. Picture this: Saturday evening in Cincinnati. You're walking the Smale Riverfront Park as the skyline lights up against the hills, each building's reflection doubling on the Ohio River. You smell food from a dozen different cuisines drifting from the bank's development, Greek, Vietnamese, upscale American, skyline chili, which is its own controversial category. You hear live music from the bars and over the Rhine, a wedding reception happening at one of the riverfront venues, and a Reds game letting out from Great American Ballpark. Your monthly housing cost is less than what your friends in Nashville pay for a one-bedroom with a view of a parking garage. The trade-off? You're in Ohio, and Ohio carries baggage. The Rust Belt legacy hangs over Cincinnati like a ghost that won't fully leave. Some neighborhoods never recovered from manufacturing collapse. Population decline created gaps in the urban fabric that haven't healed. The city peaked at 503,000 people in 1950 and now sits around 309,000. That kind of shrinkage leaves scars. Abandoned buildings, underutilized infrastructure, entire blocks that feel post-apocalyptic despite being 10 minutes from downtown. The politics lean conservative in ways that coastal transplants find jarring. Ohio swings red in elections. The state legislature makes decisions that will confuse or enrage you depending on your background, and the cultural conservatism is real. If you're expecting progressive policy or LGBTQ+ infrastructure like you'd find in Minneapolis or Portland, Cincinnati will disappoint. Winter is cold and gray in that Midwest way, where the sun disappears for months and you start to question if it ever existed. It's not Milwaukee's lake effect violence, but it's relentless. The Ohio River doesn't moderate temperatures, it just sits there looking moody while you scrape ice off your car from November through March. But let me tell you what Cincinnati has that most affordable cities don't. It feels like it's actually going somewhere. The urban core is filling back in. Young professionals are moving to over the Rhine, downtown, and the neighborhoods climbing the hills around the city. The riverfront developments aren't just renderings and promises. They're built, occupied, and functioning. The city isn't desperately trying to be the next Austin or Nashville. It's just being Cincinnati, and Cincinnati turns out to be pretty good at being itself. The job market is stable in ways that boom cities aren't. Procter & Gamble headquarters here and employs 11,000 plus people. Kroger's headquarters is here. Fifth Third Bank, GE Aviation. The healthcare sector is massive. Cincinnati Children's Hospital is one of the best pediatric hospitals in the country. Unemployment consistently runs below the national average. It's not sexy, but it's reliable, and reliability pays mortgages. The food scene has surprising depth. Skyline chili is polarizing. It's Cincinnati chili, which means it's got cinnamon and chocolate and gets served over spaghetti, and you either love it with cult-like devotion or think it's a hate crime against Italian food. No middle ground exists, but beyond the chili wars, you've got Taste of Belgium doing Belgian cuisine better than most Belgian restaurants. You've got a Vietnamese population that brought actual PHO, and the German heritage means the beer scene understood craft brewing before it was called craft brewing. One local put it perfectly. We've got a skyline that looks like it cost $1 billion to stage, rent that wouldn't cover parking in Boston, and a river that does all our marketing for us. The trade-off, it's Ohio, and we lost the branding war to Nashville decades ago. A $215,000 house in Cincinnati would cost you $620,000 in Portland, Oregon, and come with fewer hills, no river views, and significantly less skyline. The gap is real and getting wider. If you want a skyline with actual geographic drama, historic architecture that survived the wrecking ball, and a city that's quietly winning while everyone's looking at Nashville, Cincinnati is the River City sleeper that's been awake this whole time. But if Cincinnati is the sleeper, our next city is the one that's gonna detonate the comment section and test whether anyone actually read past the title. Number 3, Detroit, Michigan. The comeback everyone loves to doubt. Let's get this out of the way. Half of you just scrolled to the comments to call me insane for including Detroit. The other half are from Detroit and already typing essays about how downtown is safer than your suburban cul-de-sac. Both of you are right, and that's exactly the problem. Detroit has one of the most iconic skylines in America. The Renaissance Center dominates the riverfront. 7 interconnected skyscrapers that look like they were designed to intimidate Canada from across the Detroit River. The Guardian Building, the Penobscot Building, and the collection of Art Deco towers downtown create an architectural legacy that most American cities would kill for. At night, the whole thing lights up against the water, and it's legitimately stunning. Median home price, $75,000 $75,000. Yes, really. According to Zillow and Redfin, the median home price in Detroit proper sits around $75,000, which is less than a used pickup truck and somehow still accurate. The Detroit Board of Realtors confirms properties are sitting on the market longer than the national average. Inventory is high, and you can negotiate in ways that seem impossible if you're coming from literally anywhere else. But here's where it gets complicated. That $75,000 median includes neighborhoods where you absolutely should not buy a house. It includes areas where property taxes will cost more than your mortgage, where insurance companies won't touch you, where the home next door has been abandoned for a decade and nobody's coming to fix it. Detroit isn't one market, it's a dozen markets with wildly different realities, and the median price tells you almost nothing about where you should actually live. Downtown Detroit is experiencing a genuine revival. Dan Gilbert and other investors poured billions into the urban core. The riverfront was redeveloped, restaurants and bars filled in empty storefronts, and the occupancy rates in downtown residential towers are legitimately high. Young professionals are moving to Midtown, Corktown, and areas around Wayne State University. The Q Line connects neighborhoods, the Detroit Institute of Arts is world-class, and the food scene, especially Middle Eastern and soul food, is exceptional. But step outside those zones and you hit decline that's hard to overstate. Entire neighborhoods sit empty, services are inconsistent, crime statistics vary wildly by area. Downtown is statistically safer than many suburban areas, but 6 blocks in the wrong direction and you're in a different reality entirely. The city's bankruptcy, the water crisis, and decades of disinvestment created problems that money and optimism can't solve overnight. Pittsburgh figured out the post-industrial collapse and became the model everyone studies. Cincinnati is still working on it, but making progress. Detroit is the test case where the answer key is still being written and half the questions keep changing. The skyline remains stunning throughout. One local put it perfectly. Detroit is either the opportunity of a lifetime or a trap, and which one it is depends entirely on what block you're standing on. Property taxes in Detroit are brutal. Even with a cheap house, you'll pay thousands annually, and the services you receive in return are inconsistent. Car insurance is among the most expensive in the nation. Michigan's no-fault system means you're subsidizing a broken system whether you like it or not. Winter is cold, gray, and long, and the city sprawls in ways that make a car mandatory. But if you're willing to do the research, to actually visit before buying, to understand that Detroit is a high-risk, high-reward market, the skyline you get for the price is unmatched anywhere in America. A $75,000 house in the right Detroit neighborhood would cost you $400,000 in Pittsburgh and $900,000 in Seattle. The gap is staggering. The job market is complicated. The auto industry still dominates, but tech companies are moving in, healthcare is strong, and remote workers are discovering they can live in a renovated loft downtown for less than they were paying for a studio in Brooklyn. Unemployment has dropped significantly, though it still runs higher than the national average. Detroit is controversial because it's legitimately complicated. It's not a simple success story, and it's not a simple failure. It's a city with an incredible skyline, absurd affordability, real revival in select areas, and catastrophic decline in others. Your experience will entirely depend on where you land and how much homework you did. At least in our next city, the collapse already happened and the comeback is undeniable. Number 2. Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, the post-industrial Phoenix. If Detroit is the comeback everyone doubts, Pittsburgh is the comeback everyone studied in urban planning school and then tried to replicate everywhere else. Pittsburgh's skyline sits at the confluence of 3 rivers, the Allegheny, the Monongahela, and the Ohio, surrounded by hills that make the whole thing look like it was staged by a landscape photographer. The U.S. Steel Tower rises 64 stories, the B&Y Mellon Center anchors the Golden Triangle, and the collection of bridges, 446 of them, more than Venice, create a visual complexity that most American cities can't touch. It's not just a skyline, it's a skyline with rivers, hills, bridges, and a sense of drama that feels European. Median home price, $185,000. According to the Pittsburgh Association of Realtors, the housing market here has stayed stable through cycles that destroyed other Rust Belt cities. Zillow confirms you're getting historic homes, actual architecture, and neighborhoods with character that developers haven't isn't stripped out yet. The market moves slower than the coasts, which means you can actually think before you buy. A concept that seems quaint in 2024. Pittsburgh reinvented itself so completely that people forget it was dying. When the steel mills closed in the 1980s, the city lost 100,000 people and seemed destined to become another Rust Belt ghost story. Instead, it pivoted to healthcare, education, and technology. UPMC became one of the largest employers in the state. Carnegie Mellon turned into a tech pipeline. Google, Uber, and a dozen other companies opened offices here because the talent was cheap and the cost of living made retention easy. The food scene evolved beyond pierogies and Iron City beer, though both still exist and remain essential. Lawrenceville turned into a legitimate arts district. The Strip District became a food destination, and the South Side offers nightlife that doesn't feel like a consolation prize. The city invested in riverfronts, trails, and public spaces that actually get used. It's not perfect, but it worked in ways that Detroit is still trying to figure out. Where Detroit is still figuring out which neighborhoods work, Pittsburgh already mapped it out. Where Cincinnati is filling back in gradually, Pittsburgh finished the hard part a decade ago. The three-river setup that Cincinnati wishes it had, Pittsburgh has it, used it, and built 446 bridges just to show off about it. Picture this, autumn in Pittsburgh. You're crossing the Roberto Clemente Bridge on foot as the skyline rises against the hills, leaves turning gold and red in every direction. You smell food from the Strip District, hear live music from a bar on the North Shore, and your mortgage payment is less than what your friends in Boston pay for parking. The trade-off? Topography as a lifestyle. Pittsburgh is built on hills, not gentle California hills. Steep, punishing, icy in winter hills that make driving an adventure and parking a competitive sport. The joke about needing to check your emergency brake twice isn't a joke. Some neighborhoods require switchbacks to access. If you have mobility issues, large portions of the city become inaccessible. The 446 bridges are charming until you realize you're crossing 4 of them just to get groceries. Winter is cold and gray, the sun disappears for months, and the overcast skies that make the skyline dramatic in photos make daily life feel like you're living in a noir film. It's not brutal like Milwaukee, but it's relentless in a way that tests your mental health if you're not prepared. But the job market is strong. Healthcare, education, tech, and finance all keep unemployment low and wages competitive. The cost of living index sits around 88, meaning your dollar stretches further than in most comparable cities. A $185,000 house in Pittsburgh would cost you $750,000 in Denver and come with none of the rivers, bridges, or cultural infrastructure. One local summed it up. We're the city that figured it out. We died, came back, and kept it affordable. That's not luck, that's planning. If you want a genuinely beautiful skyline with geographic drama, a city that reinvented itself without pricing out its residents, and a cost of living that feels like it's from a different era, Pittsburgh is the success story nobody wants to admit works. But if Pittsburgh is the Phoenix, our #1 city is the paradox nobody saw coming. Number 1, Tulsa, Oklahoma, the Art Deco secret. Tulsa, Oklahoma will pay you $10,000 to move here. That should tell you something. What it actually tells you is complicated because cities don't bribe people to relocate unless they're either desperate or they know something you don't. In Tulsa's case, it's the latter. And what they know is that they're sitting on one of the most beautiful skylines in America that nobody outside Oklahoma has bothered to notice. The Bouquet Tower rises 52 stories in pure Art Deco glory. It's not trying to look modern. It's not apologizing for being in Oklahoma. It's just unapologetically 1970s geometric perfection rendered in glass and steel. The Cityplex Towers, the Mid-Continent Tower, and the collection of Art Deco buildings throughout downtown create a skyline that looks like someone took the best parts of 1920s Manhattan, the Chrysler Building's DNA, and dropped them in the middle of Tornado Alley with instructions to make it beautiful and don't worry about the budget. Oil money built this place, and oil money doesn't do things halfway. Median home price, $165,000. That's cheaper than Pittsburgh, cheaper than Cincinnati, cheaper than every other city on this list. And you're getting a skyline that rivals any of them for pure architectural drama. According to the Tulsa area realtors, the market here is stable to the point of being boring. Homes selling within 35 days, prices appreciating slowly, inventory that actually exists. Zillow data confirms you're getting space that would be impossible anywhere with an actual reputation. Yards, garages, basements that don't flood, neighborhoods like Maple Ridge and Owen Park with craftsman bungalows and prairie school homes that look like they wandered out of a Frank Lloyd Wright fever dream. You can buy a renovated 2,500 square foot historic home in Tulsa for less than a down payment cost in Austin. The math seems broken. It's not broken, it's just Oklahoma. But here's where Tulsa gets genuinely weird in ways that separate it from every other affordable skyline city we've covered. The city is actively trying to import people and culture through sheer financial force. The Tulsa Remote program has paid out millions to remote workers, and thousands have taken them up on it. The George Kaiser Family Foundation, oil money turned philanthropy, has poured over $400 million into making downtown Tulsa functional, beautiful, and worth staying in. The Gathering Place Park is 66 acres of genuinely world-class public space that would make most coastal cities jealous. It costs $465 million, it's completely free, and it has a boathouse, adventure playgrounds, sports courts, gardens, and a lodge that looks like it should require a country club membership but doesn't. It's the kind of public investment that cities talk about, and Tulsa just did. The Arts District has galleries, music venues, and restaurants that wouldn't feel out of place in Nashville or Austin. Kane's Ballroom has been hosting concerts since 1924. Bob Wills invented Western Swing here, and the venue still books acts that draw crowds from 3 states over. The food scene has legitimate depth: Burn Comer Barbecue, Kilkenny's Irish Pub, Duet Jazz Club, Mother Road Market with 24 food vendors in a restored warehouse. The skyline sits against flat Oklahoma plains with no mountains or water to frame it. Just pure geometry and Art Deco ambition against endless sky. At sunset, the whole thing glows, the BOK Tower lit up in blue, and it's genuinely beautiful in ways that don't require qualifiers or apologies or for Oklahoma disclaimers. It's just good. Picture this, Friday evening in Tulsa. You're walking through the Arts District as the skyline rises Art Deco and golden ahead of you. You smell barbecue from Burn Co., hear live music drifting from Kane's Ballroom where legends played, and your entire month's housing cost, mortgage, insurance, property tax combined, is $1,100. Your coastal friends spend that on a parking space. The trade-off, you're in Oklahoma, and Oklahoma is not subtle about being Oklahoma. If Milwaukee's winters tested your patience and OKC's tornadoes tested your basement time, Tulsa's weather will test your entire relationship with meteorology. Tornadoes are real and regular. You will spend time in a safe room while the sky turns colors that shouldn't exist in nature, and the sirens wail like the apocalypse is taking attendance. Summer temperatures regularly exceed 100 degrees with humidity that makes the air feel like it has physical mass. Winter drops below freezing, ice storms shut down the entire city for days, and the weather swings between extremes so violently you'll check the forecast twice a day just to know what season you're living in. Spring doesn't exist as a season. It's a 3-week negotiation between tornadoes and heat where you might get 70-degree perfection or you might get hail the size of golf balls. Fall is better but brief. The weather here has 3 modes: tornado watch, heat advisory, and ice storm, sometimes all in the same week. One remote worker who relocated told us, "I moved here for the $10,000. I stayed because my rent is $900. The skyline makes me forget I'm in Oklahoma twice a day, and I've learned to love my basement like it's a second bedroom." The politics lean hard conservative in ways that will test you if you're coming from either coast. The state government makes decisions that range from confusing to enraging depending on your background. Oklahoma votes red. The legislature reflects that, and if you need progressive policy or robust social services, you're going to be disappointed. Public transit is theoretical. You'll need a car for everything. The cultural isolation from both coasts is real. You're 5 hours from Kansas City, 7 from Denver, and nobody's flying into Tulsa International unless they have to. But the job market is stronger than you'd expect for a city of 410,000. Energy still dominates. This is Oklahoma. Oil runs deep, but American Airlines has a massive maintenance base here employing thousands. Healthcare is growing. The remote worker influx has created demand for services, restaurants, and businesses that didn't exist 5 years ago. Unemployment consistently runs below the national average. It's stable in ways that boom cities aren't. And unlike Detroit, where the affordability comes with massive risk, unlike Indianapolis, where you're sacrificing cultural credibility, Tulsa's affordable because it's in Oklahoma, and Oklahoma lost the branding war to everywhere else decades ago. The city works. The skyline exists. The infrastructure functions. You're just in Oklahoma, and Oklahoma carries baggage that keeps prices low and opportunity high. A $165,000 house in Tulsa would cost you $620,000 in Denver, $890,000 in Seattle, and over $1.1 million in any California city with a comparable skyline. That's not a marginal difference. It's generational. It's the gap between owning and renting, between building equity and treading water, between a skyline being a luxury item or something you just get to have because you made one weird geographic choice. Remember that $2.1 million Manhattan condo from the beginning? The one with skyline views of other buildings. In Tulsa, you get the skyline, 2,500 square feet, a yard, and $1.9 million left over to do literally anything else with your life. Tulsa is the ultimate paradox on this list. World-class Art Deco skyline, basement tier prices, a city actively investing in itself, philanthropic money creating public spaces that coastal cities can't afford, and weather that oscillates between trying to kill you and making you question if seasons are real. If you can handle Oklahoma, the politics, the isolation, the tornadic mood swings, the fact that your friends will ask why Oklahoma for the rest of your life, you get a skyline that rivals anything in America for a price that seems like someone forgot a zero. From Milwaukee's lakefront to Tulsa's Art Deco masterpiece, 7 cities with legitimate skylines where the median home price stays under $240,000. Some you've overlooked, one you've written off entirely, all of them offering something the coastal narrative says shouldn't exist: skylines without surrender. The victims here aren't the cities. They're doing fine, building, reviving, offering deals that would have been impossible a generation ago. The victims are everyone who believed the lie that skylines require 7 figures, that if a city looks good, it must cost a fortune, that your only options are visual mediocrity or financial ruin. These 7 cities prove otherwise. Skylines aren't luxury items. They're geographic accidents, architectural ambition, and oil money investments that outlasted the boom. You can have the view, the downtown, the sense of living somewhere that looks like a real city and still afford to exist. If this shattered any assumptions, hit that like button. If you're tired of coastal media telling you where you can and can't afford to live, subscribe for the insights they're not covering. Drop a comment with the most underrated skyline in America, and let's see who actually knows their cities. Thanks for watching.